13 love, 13 knowledge, 13 wisdom, 13 respect. This is your creation 13, and this is the next level. So UAPs and the drones, right? A lot of people speculate what they are. A lot of people use their faith or their narrative to explain a situation that is unknown, right? We see the activity and we identify the activity, but we don't understand the root of it. And it's also based on the research that you do, right? Do you do research? Do you look out into the stars? Do you see interesting phenomenons that happen out there? There's a lot that happen outside my town with yellow light UFOs, red light UFOs, and then green light UFOs. And I'll explain those in another video. But I can identify those with the deities that are involved with them, and it's mind blowing. It really is. But when you do your own research, you got to become your own detective. So if we're using New Jersey as a starting point for these drones or UFOs, you got to pay attention to the whole story, right? And if you just watch a lot of the things, you can tell that there's a surveillance happening in New Jersey, some kind of surveillance. And it's so very interesting with all the theories that take place. But one interesting theory that I came across was this one guy was using a red laser and putting it against the wall, and then you could look at the laser in a certain way, and supposedly you could see writing on the wall, writing wherever you put it, right? So basically creating the element that this red laser or just this red tint was allowing you to see the codes of this matrix, right? Because everything is a holographic projection. So what does that look like, right? But I'd have to experiment with it, because with red light or lasers, you can literally put your own little codes in there. You can put little pictures and things like that, so it creates the illusion that it's on the wall, but it really isn't. So that's something that we had to pay attention to. But it got me interested in it because of the different lights that they use with these drones, because there is drones. They're using drones, but there's also, like I said, yellow lights, red lights, and green lights that actually are different deities that live in this reality as well. But they use these lights differently to get different spectrums of light. And I was like, so if that red laser theory is true, then maybe what they're doing is that they're looking at different spectrums of light to see the different realities or different dimensions, breaking the veil, right? It gets interesting. And if you do more research, you'll discover that a lot of these UFOs or drones, whatever they are, they're using, what's the word I'm looking for? Electric distortion, I think, is the best way to say it. Electric distortion, or absorbing the ley lines or the electrical currents, right? Because there's been a lot of flashing, a lot of like the light poles that turn on at night and things like that. There's been a lot of flashing in different cities. And I was like, oh, so it's absorbing or distorting the electrical field or electrical currents. which is very, very interesting. And that can go into using technology um, to absorb that magnetic field to boost the energy of these different kind of crafts, right? There's so many ways that you can use energy or harness energy, right? So there's just so many different interesting things that you can find when you're researching. But the biggest thing for me is how they're talking about that they're coming from the ocean. Now, there's been so much activity of craft coming in and out of the ocean for a long, long time 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, whatever it may be. You talk to military people and they'll tell you the same thing. There's always crafts coming in and out um, of the water. Why is that? Underground bases, right? What's the best way to um, hide your secret testings than underwater, right? Underwater, in mountains, things of that nature. And it's not no conspiracy theory. You can literally look it up and find these underwater bases, and that's the best way that they do their secret stuff. And that's where you have to use your uh, detective work again, because they keep saying, "Oh, it's not the military." Of course, it's not the military making these drones, because it'd be like saying that when you're in the kitchen, you're a scientist because you can make food, right? It doesn't make sense. So yes, the military is not involved. Of course not, because that makes absolutely no sense. But secret independent or just secret service uh, areas that are classified can make these things, and they can't say anything about it because it's classified, right? So it's looking at all these little details and seeing the main agenda, right? Because Space Force is a big thing, and they're preparing people for it uh, to guard and watch the skies, because there is ancient civilizations that still live here. Ancient civilizations that still live here. And they know that they can emerge anytime. They can emerge anytime. They know of them, and it's easy to identify them, right? Because these ancient civilizations live up in the sky. They live in big, huge, huge motherships that live in the sky. There's floating islands in the sky. And this is why, a lot of planes and stuff have set routes that they can go. They can't go anywhere outside the routes that they're chosen. They make them banned for a reason, because they know about them. And they also have, again, underground or underwater civilizations as well, right? And I've been thinking about that a lot with the story of Atlantis and Lemuria and how that looked, right? Because a lot of those stories attach itself to water, and that's always got me curious. I'm like, maybe the Atlanteans were some kind of a water civilization, like they could live in the water, things of that nature. Hard to say. It's just a theory, right? Also goes into the planet Uranus and its involvement with water, and with the story of oh gosh, can't even think of his name right now. Triton. Can't think of it right now, but just that story that's involved, the mythology behind it, right? The thought of having these creatures that live underwater, or a civilization that lives underwater. And there's history that's involved with it. One of the earlier ones is depicted of these human-looking beings, but they had like a fish cloak or a fish clothing of some kind, right? Amphibious in a way. And that's one of the later versions of it. And then of course you got the Vatican. They use the same thing with the fish as well. So it makes me really look at that, right? Because in some ways it could be just a representation of Pisces, I believe it is. Is it? Oh, the fish I think is represented with Pisces. I could be wrong. And then we go into the age of Aquarius, something like that. But anyways, there's always a reason behind it. And with so much history of humans talking with mermaids and beings from the water, and then seeing UFOs coming in and out of the water, I do believe that the ancient civilization is underwater, right? And it goes into a lot of interesting things because the Bible talks a lot about these anamorphic beings, and the nymphs are talked about a lot in the Bible, and I'll be discussing that definitely in the future, just kind of touch on those different subjects. But the nymphs were known as anamorphic, where they would change shape. They could change the structure. They could look human. They could look animal. They could show their true form. Things of that nature, right? And it's documented history that there is life in the water. So it just gets very, very interesting, and it's just looking at all these clues and getting ready for that next step. Because what if these ancient civilizations make themselves known? They've made themselves known, right? And there's a treaty, right? There's a thing that I say is we're known as the surface dwellers, right? We live on the surface, but there's underground civilizations, there's underwater civilizations. They exist. And there's treaties with them. And when those treaties end, I don't know what happens, right? I think the water civilization is the one that they're scared of the most. They've taken care of most of the underground civilizations, and you do research on this. It's so interesting on the underground civilizations, and that there was a huge task to go and bury and block off all the underground tunnels and areas, because there was creatures, some would say demons, but just different looking civilizations or creatures or experiments of some kind that were coming out from underground. So it terrified them. And that's something you do research on too. It's so very fascinating. That's why I don't really like to explore, because in the back of my mind I'm like, that stuff is there. There's stories behind it. It's just, how deep do you want to go to research it, right? So it's definitely scary seeing something that you would see in a movie happen in real life. But I do believe that movies or science fiction is happening now. We're going to see that big here soon, with all the talk about the skies and the surveillance, and getting people ready for the next step to whatever the Space Force is. At the end of the day, ancient civilization will win. They're way more advanced than humans. And even though they don't show all the technology that they have, because again, the military is not the one that makes it. It's secret, classified underground bases and bases in the mountain that make these things. It's all classified, of course. So it's very interesting, but that's my thought on what's happening with these UAPs or UFOs, whatever they are. And they're definitely playing around with the magnetic field and the electrical currents, which is going to mess up a lot of things, either to their own agenda or whatnot. So we'll see what happens. Maybe it is the ancient civilization that's doing it. Hard to say, but I do feel that we'll start seeing more and more of this, but it's just paying attention to it. And remember that we want to have the best timeline possible. So it's not living in fear, but it's just observing the game and the narrative and doing the best we can to change that narrative in some way, shape, or form, right? Because so many people create the scenarios of like, oh, it's angels, or oh, it's demons, or oh, it's this, or oh, it's that, when history tells you what they are. And you just got to do a little bit of research and you'll find out what they are and who they are. It's pretty self-explanatory at the end of the day. So I definitely want to share more of that, but that's just my thoughts right now on those matters. So yeah, so love yourself, keep shining bright. Talk to you later.